Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It is brought to you by East Coast Roofing, Siding, and Windows, serving all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up online at eastcoastroofing.com. Andrew DiCecco, his observations from camp. We'll see what he saw at the NovaCare Center when he stopped by this week as the Eagles get ready for the Jets. And I know the Birds fans out there, 6:30, pregame 7:30, Merrill Reese, Mike Quick tomorrow night right here on 97.3 ESPN. We finally reached that time of the year, Andrew, the first preseason game. And I don't know how much we're going to get from these particular games, but let's see what you saw when you were at the NovaCare complex this week. And I guess the first thing would be Jalen Hurts and how much different version of Hurts you saw from what you saw this week to the guy that we saw at the end of last year.
Well, to be honest with you, Mike, there wasn't a whole lot of emphasis on the passing game when I was there on Tuesday. It was a lot of backed up drills where the team was backed up, and a lot of the running game was really implemented there. You saw a lot of Miles Sanders, particularly a lot of Jason Huntley. But the throws that Jalen Hurts did make, I saw personally a lot more zipping on his passes, a lot more anticipation. Still a little bit, quick to bail from the pocket and use his legs when things aren't necessarily materializing down the field, which you would like to see a little bit more discipline and staying in the pocket and allowing things to develop down the field. But, I think that's sort of going to be a field thing, a touch-and-go situation that I think is ultimately going to work itself out on the field. But he does look like an improved quarterback. It might be incremental improvements, but I do think you're going to see a different version of Jalen Hurts in 2022.
The word you just used there, incremental, is that good enough? If I told you that Jalen Hurts made incremental improvements, is that good enough for this team to be a legitimate contender, or do they need more from him?
Well, you're certainly going to need more from him, and there were plays that were left on the field. You got to remember, there was a lot of touchdown passes that he had last season that were wiped away, which would, take the stats for what they're worth. They're stats. Sometimes they're a little hollow, but that would have added to his total and make the numbers look a little bit better than they ultimately did. But I think if he makes different improvements as far as developing quick chemistry with A.J. Brown, which if you're looking at it from how I saw it at training camp, if that's any indication of what you're going to see this season, take the over on the total of A.J. Brown's targets, because that was the apple of his eye, and rightfully so. It's his best friend and the team's best receiver and the big-bodied weapon that they didn't have. So I think you're going to see a lot of passes thrown in his direction, which is ultimately going to help Jalen Hurts and the offense. Devontae Smith was out with a sideline with an injury, so he wasn't there. But I think that seeing the contingent of pass catchers that he has at his disposal, coupled with a second year of working with a stable coaching staff, and just knowing what it takes from him to get his play to the level that the Eagles expect, I think just having that understanding is ultimately going to help make him a better player and a more proficient quarterback for this football team. And you know what? Jalen Hurts is someone that, look, he realizes that this is pretty much he's going to get one season here in Philadelphia to really showcase everything that he can do and put it all together, or they're going to look elsewhere at the quarterback position next season. So I think he's very much aware of that. I think all that taken into account is going to ultimately put together, I think he's going to be able to put together a better season as a result.
Now, Andrew, in your notes over at InsideTheBirds.com, you said if you're predicting A.J. Brown's target totals, take the over. And I guess my question off that would be, what does that mean for the other guys, Goddard, Smith, and whoever that third guy will be? What kind of role will they have in this offense if Brown, you're saying, hey, take the over. I know you're half joking, but Brown's going to get a lot of targets. Where do you see the other guys' role now in this offense with that number one receiver that they really didn't have last year?
Right, and I think you're going to see him lean on A.J. Brown, especially when knowing that he can fit the ball in there. It doesn't necessarily have to be precise and necessarily on target. He's someone that's going to go up and fight for the football and very aggressive. You can get him the ball in space, and he's really explosive and physical after the catch, which is another presence that they didn't have in the offense, another element, I should say. But I think the biggest I think someone that's going to see the biggest impact in terms of, maybe not have the ideal target share that many would envision would probably be Devontae Smith. I think Dallas Goedert is going to be someone that he's going to continue to look for over the middle. It's going to be a nice security blanket and a good red zone option. But I think if you're really looking at it in terms of where to, there's only one football. How do you determine? How do you allocate? All these targets and with always so many snaps to have in going into a game. And I think Devontae Smith is going to be the one who maybe takes a little bit of a dip in his targets. Because remember, he was the top guy last year. But now you have you have. I think Kenny Gainwell is going to have a bigger role in the passing game as well. So he's going to see some targets. Goddard's going to be a heavy presence in the middle of the offense. I think Quez Watkins is going to see a lot more because he's going to have single coverage and have a chance to exploit the team's third corner as a vertical slot and have a little bit more explosive plays in his direction. So I think he's going to have some. But so then you don't. I mean, I don't know how you're going to be able to get the ball to everybody. So I think if I had to pinpoint and give it to one guy, I think it would be Devontae Smith.
I know. I noticed in your observations you mentioned Zack Pascal and said that he stood out. I mean, he's the veteran guy. So people generally don't get excited about the veteran. Everyone's always excited about the new rookies and young guys. But what could be a big part of Pascal's addition to this offense? What can he add?
Well, he's going to be the fourth receiver on this team, but he's a veteran. He's a hard-nosed guy that's willing to do the dirty work. He's gritty. He's going to make those tough catches in key moments, and I think situationally, Mike, he's going to help out, be it in the red zone or timely third down receptions. He's going to have a role. It's not going to be probably a large one, but you're having a veteran that has experience with Nick Sirianni going back to his time with Indianapolis. He's a guy that knows what it takes to fight from the bottom of the roster and knows he puts in because he was an undrafted free agent that bounced around. He was initially with the Titans, then he found a home with the Colts. So I think he's willing to do what it takes to see the field, and he's a good team guy. And I was really impressed with just his ability to pick things up. Remember, he missed a lot of the training camp with food poisoning, and he seemed to develop a pretty quick rapport with no matter who the quarterback was. So I think that speaks to his football acumen and just his overall ability and ability to just process different systems. He picked it up pretty quickly. So interested to see how they use him this season.
I'm interested to get your take because a lot of these running backs that have been signed in the last 48 hours, you probably have a lot more insight on than the average guy who's down at the NovaCare complex. But we know it's been Gainwell and Miles Sanders, but both those guys have been banged up. So who's left?
Yeah, we have Jason Huntley, and Jason Huntley is someone who I thought had a decent shot to make the team last summer. It really impressed me in the practice that I was at, and then this year as well. You love his acceleration and his burst. He doesn't have the size, but I talked to his college offensive coordinator a couple of years ago when the Eagles first signed him, and he said, he doesn't look like it. So it's a little bit deceptive, but he was the strongest guy on our football team. So he doesn't necessarily have that, but he does run with proper pad level and some power. That's not his game at the pro level. I get that, but he's a good receiver, can really help in the kick return game. Now, I don't know if that aspect of his game is going to be enough to get him onto the roster. You got to remember how often are teams really able to return kicks in today's NFL, given the different rules. But I really think that he will probably be a guy that sticks around the practice squad, provided he doesn't really showcase too much in the preseason, enough so where a team would want to scoop him up off waivers. But I was really impressed with him, and I have been for the second year in a row. I would like to see what he can do with his opportunities in the preseason. You also have Kennedy Brooks from Oklahoma, big-bodied running back. He had a couple of carries the other day, and again, it's hard to gauge our running backs what they're able to really do in training camp because there's no contact. But you really like the way that he hits the hole with authority. He runs with, he runs with a heavy pad level. I think he's going to be a guy that seeks out contact between the tackles, and is going to have some of those runs that you're going to see end up on Twitter after some of these preseason games. And you look at the dire situation of the running back room right now. Huntley and Kennedy Brooks are going to see the lion's share of the snaps, I would think, on Friday night. So people are going to get introduced to Kennedy Brooks pretty soon.
Also, you talk about the lion's share of the snaps. I would imagine those are going to go to Reed Sinnett, Carson Strong, and maybe Gardner Minshew will get a quarter. But I would imagine you're going to see more of Sinnett and Strong in these three preseason games. And a lot of people really impressed what they see from Reed Sinnett.
Yeah, and I would be one of them. I wrote about Reed in my observations. You know, he didn't get a ton of snaps. He saw some action towards the back part of the practice, but quick release, strong arm, is very decisive in where he's going to go with the football, and just seeing his progression and some of the things that I've gathered, he's had a very consistent camp. And at 6'4", 225, he has the size that you look for. I believe he's 25 years old. So if he's able to showcase any intangibles or promise in the preseason, the Eagles could have a long-term solution as a backup quarterback. I don't know what you're going to be, if the Eagles are justifiably going to be able to keep 3 quarterbacks on the 53-man roster, but I think he's definitely in the conversation to stick on the practice squad. He's someone that always started one season at San Diego. That was the senior season. Threw for, I believe it was like 3,200 yards, 32 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, just under 67% completion percentage. So he's someone that I think needs the reps. And the reps that he's getting, he seems to becoming more comfortable in how to orchestrate and facilitate the flow in an NFL offense. So Reed Sinet's a guy that I would look for in these games to see what he's able to do, because he'll be throwing to a guy like Deion Kane, who has some NFL experience. Like, he's not throwing to guys that are necessarily green. So I want to see if he's able to take advantage of the weapons that are at his disposal.
You'll see a lot of him probably Friday night, and you can hear that game on 97.3. Let's look at your observations on defense, because there's a lot of storylines on that side of the ball. And we keep hearing great reports about Marcus Epps. He's a guy that I know you like coming into camp, and he's shouldering a lot of the load at safety right now with Anthony Harris.
Yeah, Marcus Epps is the Eagles' best coverage safety. I can definitively say that right now, and I would like to see what he's able to do now with an elevated role, right? He's never done that at this level before, so I think there's some question marks there, but you never question his instinctiveness and his toughness and the way that his processing. It's just the opportunities, right? I mean, he's someone that has made considerable improvements each season in the NFL. And obviously the defensive coordinators in the past, be it Jim Schwartz or Jonathan Gannon, have instilled a lot of trust in him to carry out his responsibilities. So now I would like to see what he's able to do. Now, I think he's best suited, Mike, to be not the top safety, but the second best safety on the back end. You know, like the second best guy. He shouldn't be your top option on the depth chart. So they have a lot of questions there as far as Anthony Harris and Jaquiski Tartt, who has not been there. He's been away from the team for a little bit due to personal reasons, so you hope everything's okay there. Anthony Harris is a very limited player. He missed yesterday's practice with an extracted tooth, but he's more of a box safety. He doesn't really have that range to cover on the back end consistently. So they're really lean there at safety. Kayvon Wallace made a nice play when I was there. Nice deflection that was intercepted by Davion Taylor. But other than that, he's been very quiet and hasn't really capitalized on his additional snaps. So he kind of is what he is, Mike. He's more of a developmental depth safety that I think is going to always be on the fringes of the roster every summer. Decent special teams player, but I don't know that he's really going to move the needle. So he faces an uphill battle as well. So that's a position that I could see the Eagles looking to add, whether it be free agency, waiver. Well, I shouldn't say free agency, because what you have out there is pretty much there for a reason. Either they're a veteran towards the end of their career, or they have an extensive injury history. So I would say you would look at it via trade or possibly, not necessarily a Jesse Bates. It doesn't have to be a Jesse Bates, but it could be someone in like a candidate, maybe like a Miles Sanders that's in the final year of their deal or something to that effect. But they definitely need to upgrade that room, because when you really look at it beneath the surface, they have some issues there.
You mentioned Bradbury, and then, of course, we know Slay. And then there's all those other guys. Are any of those other guys pulling away that stand out at all? Are any of those other guys, I guess they took McPherson last year, was a 4th-round pick. You've got all the different guys they've brought in, Mac McCain, Josh Joby, these undrafted, all the way from the undrafted free agents to the 4th-round pick. Anybody in that group's catching your eye?
I'll tell you who did. Josh Joby, the undrafted corner from Alabama, right? I mean, he was somebody that was highly regarded when they signed him, and didn't really hear much about him until recently. I believe even in the open practice, he really shined. And then when I saw him, he stripped Richard Rodgers on a completion, so it showed a little bit of a hustle and an effort to get after the football. When the guy caught a football in front of him, he was visibly upset. Like he doesn't take things lightly. And he's someone that is always on the ball. He's always in the vicinity. He's always flowing to the football with urgency. and a very physical player. And he's going to be a player that I'm going to be keying on to see what he's able to do in a live game situation, because I think that he's not afraid to mix it up, and I think he's going to be someone that could force a turnover here. Does he have an uphill battle to make the team? Of course. There's a guy named Josiah Scott, you may remember, who saw a very limited time on the Eagles last season, but he's another guy that when I was there, he had an interception off a deflection, and he's had a very consistent camp. So these are a couple of guys that you're looking at fight for that final job there. I mean, I initially thought I was going to go to Tay Gallen, but he really hasn't done anything to emerge from a crowded pack. Mac McCain had a couple of tough reps when I saw him, very physical. I should say he's a little bit grabby, particularly in one-on-ones, and I think he's a little bit further behind when you look at that. But other than that, there hasn't been Mario Goodrich, the corner. I thought that when you're comparing him to Josh Jobe, the two undrafted signings, I think Josh Jobe's ahead of Mario at this point.
All right, the one area that I think a lot of people are interested to see what it looks like, maybe even starting on Friday night, is that linebacker room. You know, Nakobe Dean, people were excited about. Davion Taylor, a lot of talent. Then you got TJ Edwards. People are kind of like melancholy about it, seems. Kaiser White, they signed him in the offseason. People don't know a whole heck of a lot about him. How do you kind of see this linebacking? Now you got a chance to see those guys on the field. Obviously, a big upgrade in athleticism, I would imagine, at that position.
Oh, it's an immense upgrade, and seeing it before your eyes, it really solidifies it and drives that point home, Mike. I'll say Kaiser White, to me, is so instinctive and flows and swarms to the football. It wouldn't surprise me, and I wrote this in my observations piece on InsideTheBirds.com, if he leads the Eagles in tackles this season. He just is relentless in pursuit, and he's coming off his best season of his career last season with the Chargers, and I think that's going to carry over right now. Remember, I think he's only 26 years old, so he's entering the prime of his career, and I think he's going to complement what they have in TJ Edwards, who's that steady Eddie, and we talk about that. While he doesn't have any distinctive traits that really stand out or are overly enticing, I think that he makes up for it with his football IQ, his toughness, his tackling prowess, and his ability to process things. He's a very smart player and very physical at the point of attack. So I think they kind of had the best of both worlds when you look at it in terms of their two stack linebackers there. I don't want to discredit Davion Taylor because he's had a really good camp. He stayed healthy, most importantly, very fluid, athletic. I think he's gotten a little bit more comfortable within what they're asking him to do, and he's someone that I would think would have a very much so have an elevated role as a third linebacker. And I didn't see much in the way of Nakobe Dean. That's not, like I mentioned on your show last week, that's not something to be alarmed about. But the guys in front of him right now are they're absorbing the defense a little bit at a faster rate, and they're playing well. So I mean, it's kind of going to be hard initially, at least, to break into that force field, so to speak. But I think that his ability will enable him to carve out a role, whether it be midway point of the season, late in the season, whatever the case may be. But I think he'll have a role, just not right away. That those top three guys are performing pretty well.
All right, we'll leave you with this because you were there, so you get a chance to see the immense size of Jordan Davis. The size, the athleticism, what it looks like in person for a man of that size.
Yeah, he's a people mover, and he just engulfs. I mean, he just engulfs guards, and he just clogs things up on the inside. And it really drives home the point that I made initially when he was drafted, in that he's going to open things up for the entire defensive line, because he has to be accounted for. There's going to be two guys that are going to have to dedicate themselves to trying to block him. He's going to be very disruptive and push the pocket. But you're going to see a guy like Josh Sweat that's going to be able to clean up. Hassan Reddick is going to be able to clean up. Brandon Graham, who looked fantastic, by the way, in training camp at 34 years old, coming off an Achilles tendon tear. All these guys are going to be beneficiaries of just the immense size and power of a guy like Jordan Davis.
All right, tomorrow night, our first look at this Eagles team. What is the biggest thing tomorrow night you will be locked in on?
I want to see what some of these depth defensive linemen look like. Milton Williams or Teron Jackson, who looks a lot bigger, and he's playing the game at a faster rate this year. And I believe he had a sack either yesterday or today. I want to see how some of these depth guys fit in because they are locked and loaded as far as starters and immediate backups go, and I want to see if they're able to take advantage of it and how much they've grown and developed from this point last season.
All right, Andrew DiCecco at DiCecco NFL tomorrow night. Eagles and Jets right here on 97.3 ESPN. Football at 4. We'll have it covered all next week here to recap the Eagles and Jets and get you ready for the Eagles and Browns next Sunday at 1 o'clock here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Andrew, we'll talk to you, pal.
Sounds good, man. Have a good one.
Excellent breakdown and observations from Eagles training camp from Andrew DiCecco from InsideTheBirds.com.